Hey guys, how's it going? Venture Investing here today. So today we're going to be talking about space, SPCE. Now it's been a little bit since I made a video on them. It was actually quite popular. It's got almost 10,000 views now. But Virgin Galactic, we're talking about Virgin Galactic, they released their Q1 2020 earnings results. They also gave a lot of updates on the company. Taking a look at the stock, it's just been soaring today, up over 11.3%, nearing that $19 a share here again. And there's some reasons why I think it's up so much today. There's some reasons why I think it's probably not deserved to be up so much today. And if you want to know those reasons, I'll mention again later in my video, but I'll put a link right here, right now, to the first video I made where I actually did a little bit of evaluation on Virgin. Anyway, in this video, we're going to quickly go over some of the numbers that they posted, some of the news. We're going to quickly go through the presentation because there's some good information in there, supplementary to this, and in addition to this as well. And then we're going to quickly go through the financial statements to show you a couple things that I was like, and some things that I was more pleased with. So I've got actually three of them here because they kind of go back and forth. They're talking about, of course, Q1 2020. They do compare it to the last quarter of last year, which is Q4 2019. And on occasion, they've compared it on a year-over-year basis. So they've kind of pick and choose what they've done with that. So I laid it out this way so you guys can see. Revenue was $238,000, which was actually down from $529,000 as of last quarter, and down significantly from a year ago of 1.78 million. Now, this is primarily to do with contracts that they have with the government. This is, of course, nothing to do with the deposits that they have from customers for spaceflight, but it's still something that they report, of course. So it's not really that relevant as of now. They were saying on the conference call that that's probably be going down into the future due to the situation that we're in right now. So net income was negative $60 million. They're saying that improved from last quarter of negative $73 million. But if you look a year ago, it was $42.5 million loss. So significantly worse from there. The one main thing we should probably focus on is their cash, right? Because they need that cash to push forward with this company. $419 million in cash as of this last quarter, and then the quarter ago they're about $480 million. Of course, they're burning through cash. A year ago, I couldn't get that information because I don't think that they were a publicly traded company at that time, but on some of the reports they did represent these. So I imagine this is probably a lot higher, but I'm not quite too sure. If you guys know, leave a comment in the description. So in terms of some of the milestones that they had, so they completed a glide flight of the VSS Unity. That was on May 1st. I think that's a really good thing. Of course, that shows that even though with everything that's going on right now, they still managed to do that test flight. They talk about how they have certain policies in place, health recommendations, stuff like that, yet they were still able to do that flight, give those pilots valuable experience, and eventually push to that next stage that we want to see, where we see Richard Branson, of course, going to space. But there's another step in front of this one, the glide flight, of course. This is pretty huge. Space Act agreement with NASA. We're going to go into that a little bit more, but essentially what it is it's a collaborative effort to develop high speed, and what I'm assuming is eventually commercial applications for flight, which is something I talked about originally in my first video of being one of the things that I think is probably the most positive going forward, other than, of course, the space tourism. I think this could be huge. Another massive thing that I think is driving the stock is they've had 400 paid deposits in a step that they're calling in one small step. Now, I'm going to show you, don't worry, I'll show you about this a little bit later when we go through their slideshow here. But it's essentially taking qualified pool and getting paid deposit on people that are a little bit more willing to do it. They call one small step. So it's $1,000 deposit. So of course, 400 times 1,000, that was $400,000 in deposits that they got. And they're saying if they recognize that, as in people follow through and sign up, it could be over $100 million in potential revenue there. So those were the quick bullet points of some of the big news. So let's get into the report right now and look at a little bit more detail as to what's going on. Of course, with all the issues that are going on in the world right now, They are doing relief efforts for the issues that we have right now. This one was actually kind of interesting that they're partnering with NASA to develop innovative solutions. And what they're basically doing, and you can read this if you want, is they're developing negative pressure enclosures. Now these don't, as far as I'm aware, substitute completely for a ventilator, but for people that maybe, that need a little bit more oxygen and that, are maybe going downhill a bit, they provide assistance in that respect. They also stated that they donated medical supplies to communities in California and New Mexico, including masks, suits, and gloves. And here you can see, of course, the mask or the hood there, and they're also, as far as I'm aware, they talked about on the conference call, making partitions as well that can be used to kind of separate patients as well. Of course, they go into the updates in terms of their production. I mean, we talked about this a little bit on my last video, but since then, they gave the update on the build program, where they stated they completed numerous structural and mechanical installations on SS2. You can read them there if you want. One of the key notable things they talked about was they fabricated a high temperature nose cone, and they also completed various other important factors. So, I mean, this is obviously something that they don't give a huge amount of money or a huge amount of information on, but it's something that I think is definitely drives the stock quite a bit when we see that, that vision coming forward that we're going to have, I think it was 5 spaceships, and if they're, building this one faster than they built the other, then that's going to be a good thing going future. And they are, and they've mentioned learning from some of their mistakes and some of the things that worked. So they actually, during these times, having a lot of progress building these spacecrafts. Of course, Spaceport America milestones, they give some light here in terms of what has transitioned there. Of course, they've got all their staff there, even though some of them, of course, were working from home. They completed the 1st and 2nd floors of Spaceport America, and they continued to build on the 3rd floor at Spaceport America, which they're saying will be used for the astronaut training and in-flight preparation activities. So, I mean, looking at this thing, I've always thought it looks amazing. It's this, in the middle of nowhere, this very futuristic spaceport that just looks phenomenal. Of course, they're going through all the applicable FAA approvals. I'm not going to go through these. Pause the screen right now if you want to take a look at them. I don't really know what a lot of them mean anyway, but they're saying that they're having significant success with that. And of course, like I said, they did their test flight, the glide of the VSS Unity from Spaceport America. You can see some video here of this that they uploaded as well. So this actually was, pretty cool looking. It went extremely high up. They were able to do it even all the stuff going on, and they're saying that they're readying the vehicles for long-term high rates of service. As far as I'm aware, the next step is going to be a little bit more in depth, and then the next step after that, they're hoping that they can get Richard Branson up and actually go into space. So things are materializing. We're getting a little bit closer to the actual ability to take customers. Who knows exactly when that will be, but it's great that they actually uploaded a video, and this video was from their YouTube channel. In terms of the Space Act agreement with NASA, so they're saying this agreement enables collaboration between NASA, Virgin Galactic, and the spaceship company to advance U.S. efforts to produce technologically feasible high Mach vehicles. So again, like I said, this seems like it's going to be more commercial applications flying across the globe is what I'm saying. They didn't say too much about this. Make a comment down below if you know, but very exciting. So they're saying the initial focus will be on vehicle thermal management and propulsion system options in the Mach 3 to 5 regime. Obviously, thermal management is something that is extremely important at that speed, so that's something they're focusing on first. And they go on here to mention a little bit more. I'll let you read it if you want, but I think that's the gist of it, that they're looking at Mach 3 and above, and they're starting with some of the, the heat management and stuff like that. But, it's very limited information, but something to definitely keep note of for sure. As mentioned, the One Small Step initiative. So they're saying that they launched the One Small Step initiative on February 26, 2020. So it was for prospective customers that can secure their place at the front of the line for future ticket reservations when ticket sales reopen, because they're actually not open right now. Again, it was a $1,000 refundable deposit that was required, and as of April 29, 2020, that wasn't long ago now, they received over 400 deposit payments exceeding initial expectations. So again, deposits represent over $100 million of potential future revenue upon full ticket payment. And of course, these came from a lot of different countries. They're saying 54% of the participants were aged 35 to 54 years old. Now they talk again about their direct sales funnel. I think this is the most important slide that they provided, and personally when I first looked at it I was a little bit confused. So I think the best way to look at it is to look at this funnel on the right here where they have leads, prospects, qualified prospects, and future astronauts. So it kind of funnels down, of course, as the name indicates, down to actually people that have signed up. So they're saying they have total accessible market they figure is about over 2 million high net worth individuals. From those registrations on the websites are called prospects, they have over 9,160. Of course, those are people that just have a desire to do it. They haven't necessarily taken the step. So they initiated this one small step prospect step right in the middle between prospects and future astronauts that allows these people to put a little bit more down, take a one small step, and 400 people. They're saying this isn't all of the people that were initially registered in that 9,000, but some of them were, dropped $1,000. At the very bottom, we have one giant leap, they call it. So they have over approximately 600 customers that have actually signed up, and that's $80 million approximately in deposits. So on the conference call, they were really excited about the fact that the 400 qualified is approaching almost the 600 people that have actually signed up. Yes, that's good, but these people still haven't exactly signed up. It's a refundable deposit, but something similar to what Tesla's doing. But definitely definitely something great in terms of the demand for their product or service rather. So going a little bit more depth to that funnel, again they're saying the project pool or the prospect pool rather reached 9,160, and that was as of April 29, 2020. This is the part that I found the most positive. They're saying continued growth in registrations of interest, with registrations increasing by 1,200, up 15%. So I mean, when you only have 9,160 and you're seeing an increase of 1,200, that's showing demand, and even though it's only 15%, that's huge, is ramping up in a relatively short amount of time, in like 3 months, right? And again, they talk about at the very bottom here, approximately 600 future astronauts as of April 29, 2020. And again, that's about $80 million in deposit. They're saying no meaningful increase in refund requests from existing future astronauts, and of course that demonstrates strength. I do have one concern in there though that I will mention when we quickly go through their balance sheet, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, in terms of this being probably the most important thing if you want to look at the company right now, I think it's this slide. So now let's take a quick look at their financial statements. The first one we're going to take a look at is a consolidated statement of operations and comprehensive loss. This one is actually measuring the year over year. So they say the 3 months ended March 31st, 2020 and 2019. So this last quarter, of course, was 2020. Revenue was $238,000, as I said, in comparison to $1.78 billion a year ago. Not really that relevant, but you can see down the next line here how SG&A has obviously increased, but that makes sense. From 26.7 million, it was only 12.2 million a year ago. However, they're ramping up. These are all expected to be, these are all expected. Just like R&D here. I mean, it's actually R&D hasn't gone up that much, 34.2 million versus 31. So their operating loss, of course, widened from 42.9 million to almost $61 million. What made their net loss not quite as bad? Well, they had some interest income of $1.1 billion. That's versus 353,000 a year ago. I don't really know what that is. I'm assuming that this might have to do with some of their investments, so that they didn't mention this. The CFO didn't mention it on the conference call. So that gave them the net loss of $59.9 million versus $42.59 million a year ago. And of course, that deepened their basic and diluted EPS loss. The loss was 30 cents a share versus 22 cents a share a year ago. Looking at their balance sheet, again, they switched a little bit here. I didn't really like how they didn't represent a year ago. This is as of last quarter, and then last quarter before that. So I mean, when I say last quarter, I'm talking about this last quarter that ended here March 31st, 2020, and then they're giving the last quarter of last year, December 31st, 2019. So we're not looking at a year-over-year basis, we're looking over what they call sequentially. Of course, they said as of this last quarter, they had $419 million in cash. Of course, they're burning through cash. That was down $480 million. As of last quarter, year-over-year, I couldn't get, again, if you guys know, that would be great. PPE, property, plant, and equipment, has obviously increased in value. Of course, they've got Spaceport America, 52 million versus 49 million. And the other thing that really piqued my interest was under liabilities and shareholders' equity. This is where they show their customer deposits, because they can't show it as recognized yet because it's a liability as of now. We know right now that they received $400 or over $400,000 at the end of April from One Small Step. And they said that there's been no noticeable, cancellations or anything like that. But we're looking at quarter over quarter here, and it's actually down $98,000. Their customer deposits as of this quarter was 83.2 million, but it was actually 83.36 million the quarter before that. So I was a little surprised that nobody mentioned that on the conference call, and perhaps I'm missing something. If you guys know, what that is, for sure let me know. But I'm wondering if that means that some of the other deposits that have been received have been retracted, and the net effect was actually, down. So it's kind of like you got to look at all these different things when you're investing and think, what's really going on? So that's something if I was an investor and I actually have just a very small share in them right now, I would be very focused on that and maybe trying to find out what's going on there. Looking what they did with their actual cash on the cash flow statement. Of course, here they're again going to a year-over-year basis, so that's something to keep in mind. Not a significantly complex cash flow statement because there's not much going on. Of course, operating cash flow is down a year-over-year, but I was looking at capital expenditures. That was at about $4 million, and that's up from $3 million a year ago. They did mention that's the spaceport and tooling costs associated with their spacecraft, so of course that makes sense. So their net decrease in cash and cash equivalents for the quarter was $61 million, and that's versus to actually being an increase of cash of about 1.4 a year ago. But again, like I said, that's to be expected when you're expanding, when you're really trying to ramp up we always talk about Tesla production spacecrafts, and doing these test flights and stuff like that, and actually moving to this new spaceport location. So now I'm going to give you my opinion on the good things, the bad things, and why I think the stock's up so much right now. Of course, the good things are they have zero debt. You can see that on their balance sheet. Of course, there's a lot of money that's being lost, but I don't like to see companies that have a lot of debt right now, so that's great. Of course, the biggest positive thing going forward is, potentially, other than that little caveat that I saw there on the balance sheet, the demand does seem very strong. I don't know what's going on with that, and it's an extremely, extremely exciting thing that's piqued so many people's interest, especially I think millennials are just very interested in the stock, and probably a lot of people that are buying it. In terms of the negatives, okay, well, we do mention that one thing on the balance sheet, but I also worry a little bit about valuation. Again, go to my other video. I'll leave a link in the description as well. If you're curious how I value the company or how I still value it, because I haven't changed my mind on that. But we have 600 confirmed people that want to fly. That's about 200, as far as I'm aware, $250,000 a ticket. That's about $150 million. However, when they're talking about their future, they're talking about having all their spacecrafts operational. And I mean, this could definitely be the case. I did my valuation about $375 million in terms of the amount of people that they thought they'd be having a year at that price. Whether they're going to raise or lower it, I don't know. So if you take that and that 50 times earnings, we're sitting at $19 a share. That's slightly above what we're at right now. Of course, they do have over 9,000 people who are interested. And if you did, $250,000 for each one of those, you're looking at over $2.3 billion in revenue. So that shows you the potential. But I'm just saying, as of now, the people that are interested, that could be the concern. So that's something that I would, consider bearish on the company, because it's always important to look at the positive and the negatives, of course. So Why is it up in my opinion? Okay, well, reservations, we saw that slide, I'll show it again here, are significantly up. They're over 9,000 with approximately 1,200 added in the last 3 months. Of course, another extremely exciting thing is the Space Act agreement with NASA. What are we going to see with that? So I think that's one of the most positive things as well. Also, the space glide flight, I'll put that one on the top. I think any progress on testing these flights is, extremely positive in the stock. When it was announced that they were going to do it, or their timeline, the stock soared. So I think that's one of the reasons that they actually conducted that. There's no delays or anything like that. That's another reason that it's going up as well. Of course, the deposits as well. People putting their money where their mouth is, putting that $1,000 down, even though it's not that much. It's showing more demand, and I think that's exciting investors as well. A little less relevant, I think people are very relieved that over 90% of the workforce is back. There was, significant disruptions as in terms of people that didn't have to be there, weren't there, but they're saying 90% are back, and that's one of the major concerns with all companies right now going forward, right? And of course, the good progress on the second spacecraft, which kind of ties into the glide and taking Richard Branson, and then of course taking people to space. So I think those are the major reasons that the stock is responding the way it is, even though technically, the financials aren't great, but we can't really expect that at that level. So again, if you want to know my thoughts more, just my personal opinion, watch my other video, look through my channel if you're watching on some other device where you can't look on the description or the links that I had pop up there. But in terms of going forward, I'm going to be watching it really closely. I do have a very small position in the company, but I'll probably get out around 19 or 20. I just kind of riding this little bit of a swing trade that we have going on right now. So going to be really interesting going forward, looking at what's going on. I'd love to know your guys' thoughts. Are you still really bullish? I think a lot of people are really bullish on the company. What did you think of this quarter? Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. Really helps the channel. So that's going to be it for today, guys. See you in the next one.